Hi, this is Caroline from The Happy Sensitive. Today I want to talk about success. What does success really mean? As in, like, what actually constitutes success? Because one of the things I found is that the further along I am on this happy sensitive journey, the more I appreciate having quiet time, having kind of like, I know this sounds exaggerated, but like an empty life where there's a lot of space. There's a lot of space to come up with something out of nothing, right? That means just first not having to do anything, not having to go anywhere, not having to produce anything, but having the space to just maybe do something, maybe do nothing. And I'm finding that that kind of space is really, really crucial for building my intuition further. Because your intuition is very, very soft. It's a very soft whisper. And the deeper you get into the subtleties of your intuition and the detailed guidance that you can get from your intuition, the more time you need to have, in your day to be quiet and just have no pressure and just listen. And so this is a really interesting kind of wealth, time, right? Having the time to do that. So I was thinking about how different that is from our normal, like conventional understanding of success, which is that you're busy, and like everyone's pulling at you and everyone wants something from you and there's just so much going on in your life, you don't have time and you're maybe rushing from one party to the next, or you're like rushing from one volunteer job to the next, or you're taking care of everyone and you collapse in bed exhausted. And somehow there's this image, in our society that means that you're successful. And even if you're listening to this and you're like, no, I don't believe that. I like my quiet time. I think you'll still find that when you have the opportunity to create more quiet time, these feelings and images of failure will come up. Failure of, like if nobody's pulling at me, if nobody's requiring something of me, then I'm a failure, that I'm not successful, I'm not interesting enough, because these are really deeply rooted ideas in our society. So this is very interesting when you want to nurture your intuition, is that knowing that there's a high chance you're going to be up against these kinds of feelings. There's something wrong with having truly free time, not free time that's scheduled where you have to go somewhere, you have to go to a yoga class, or you have to go to a Tai Chi class, or you have to go to a gardening club, or you like have to go somewhere, but just free time where you really, you're good. Like you could do nothing the rest of the day and you're fine. Like it's nothing bad's gonna happen. That kind of free time, as much as maybe people say they want that at some point, when you have it, all these old images of failure and success are gonna come up. These feelings of I should be busier, I should be doing something. And it can also create a kind of, subtle anxiety, because in that space, in that nothingness, things can surface, old emotions, old signals that your body's been trying to communicate with you about, old intuitive warnings or information that normally you were too busy to pay attention or to have time to sort it out. But now that you have some real quiet, a real stretch of quiet, all this stuff surfaces. So if you have an expectation that, on top of, success is that you're really busy, but also that if you have this quiet time and you feel uncomfortable with it, that something's wrong, you're going to run away from it, right? You're going to run away from this quiet time, even though quiet time is really, really important for highly sensitive people. Because we have a nervous system that's more easily overstimulated, more easily saturated, we have to create time to let everything settle. Like a snow globe, we're easily shaken up, and that's fine, and it can be very creative, and you can have a lot of ideas, and there can be a lot going on, and we can make a lot of connections and, learn things. But when there's a lot of that shaking, you also need time to let everything settle. And quiet time is the space, a container in which things can truly settle. But it can bring up these feelings of discomfort and not knowing and feeling like you're on the wrong track, like something is wrong, because of these deeply embedded ideas in our society of what success means and what it looks like and how it should feel. And that, if you're successful, it kind of like the Hollywood lifestyle image that's out there of like, if you're super successful, everyone's inviting you to their parties, and even if you don't want to go, you still have that pressure of like, oh, I'm invited, and like I should go there, and I should prepare, and I should do this and should do that. There's that idea that success means being busy and having people ask a lot from you. And so when you truly can relax and have quiet time, that's because you have created that space where there's no expectations of you. You've set boundaries so that you can just really have time to yourself. And it can feel disconcerting, it can feel wrong. So for these reasons, ironically, creating quiet time can be hard because you're up against all these, feelings and sensations and little pressures inside that you don't initially know what to do with per se, and that might make you feel like you're on the wrong track. If you're listening to this and you think, I actually would like to create more quiet time, I have a program called Peaceful Presence in which I teach you a way to be in your body in a very peaceful way. And I also send you emails for a month to help you understand all the ins and outs that can come up as you're embracing more peacefulness in your life. Now, like peace sounds cool, like that's nice, but what's the use of peace in your life? Well, one of the things is that the more peaceful you get, the more attuned you get to your intuition. Because your intuition gets overgrown and crowded out by loud thoughts in your mind and fears and anxieties and all that. So if you want to be able to hear and receive what your intuition is trying to tell you, you have to have a quiet space. And a lot of people fuss and get frustrated because they don't feel like they have quiet space in their life, right? They're looking for like an outer quiet space, but really what you need is an inner quiet space. Because if you're stressed out because you don't have a quiet space in your home or in your, just in your area, there's no place you can go where you feel quiet. Of course, it's helpful to have a space like that. But even if you find a space out there that's quiet, if you have a lot of inner stress, then the smallest little thing out there is still going to upset you, is still going to throw you off. It's still going to make you feel pressured and anxious and unhappy and kind of like frustrated with something. So when you have inner peace, then there's a lot of spaces that can serve as a peaceful place for you to rest and relax and recharge. Even if for other people, they might think, well, this is not exactly perfect. It's kind of noisy, or it's too bright, or it's too this or too that. And you're not bothered by that because you have this inner peace that you take with you. So this is very powerful, right? Like having this inner peace on the inside where you can take it with you wherever you go is much more powerful than having to retreat to like a safe corner in your home or somewhere else where you feel like you have to escape from the world, because then it always becomes a fight, between the world where there's like demands on you and there's pressure and there's stress, and then wanting to escape to the safe place where ultimately you cannot be all the time, you cannot live there because you have to go out into the world. So the cool thing is like you can actually create that space on the inside. And by the way, that doesn't mean that you become all like, hello, I am a very quiet, calm person. It doesn't become monotonous. What it does is it creates a space where all your energy and all your emotions can live. So that if you have a lot of energy, a lot of ideas, a lot of emotions, those are all still going to be there. We're not going to flatten them. We're not going to suppress, or we're not going to push them away. But it's creating that inner space where all of that can be, and all of that has space to be, and all of that has space to settle, and you can hear your intuition, and you don't feel stressed out or crowded out by everything that's happening. Because the ways and the reasons we feel stressed out often is because something happens out there, and then on the inside, things are happening that we're fighting with. I shouldn't feel this way, this shouldn't be happening, and then we add more pressure, and that ultimately creates the real stress. Of course, there are situations that are just too much, right? There is music that is just too loud, things like that. But a lot of stressors happen because we don't have that inner quiet space. And when you do have the inner quiet space, and you might know that, like when you're on holiday or you just return from holiday, that suddenly you can handle a lot more than normal because everything inside of you has kind of settled down, and there's just a lot of space inside of you, and it feels like a lot of things are not such a big deal. But then when you're filled up with all the sounds and noises and stresses and obligations of the world, the smallest thing can throw you off, right? Because then that inner space gets clogged. So this is why it's so important to have a practice where you keep coming back to building this capacity to hold peace on the inside for yourself, but not just for yourself, also for other people. If you're a parent and you have kids who are loud and busy and chaotic and unfocused, and you're like, how do I get them to calm down? The best way to get people to calm down is for you to focus on your own inner peace on the inside, right? If you start fighting with other people, you want to force them to calm down so that you can calm down, this never works. It becomes a power battle. But if you get really strongly anchored on the inside in this peaceful feeling that everybody has access to, like you just need to know how to access it, but it's in there, then that radiates outward. And then people will start to feel at peace around you and start to calm down around you, because ultimately the strongest vibe wins. And the strongest vibe is not the loudest vibe. It's not the most obnoxious vibe. It's just the most securely anchored vibe. And when people are anxious and stressed and loud and kind of acting crazy, they have a loud vibe, but it's not necessarily a strong vibe. It's not very grounded. It's not very solid. Right? So it's actually quite easy once you can really anchor that peace on the inside to help calm things down, not by trying to influence or change anyone, but just by you being peaceful. Because people who are stressed out and who are chaotic, they're often looking for some sense of peace. They actually want that. They actually are craving that. Not everybody, some people don't. Some people hate it. But a lot of people, they actually want that. But they don't know how to get there. And so if you start, going along with them in their upset and their anxiety and they're like, burr, 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 then you just amplify that energy. And if instead you can step back and say, I'm going to focus on peace on the inside first, first of all, you're taking your own stressors out of that whole dynamic, so you're not feeding the fire. And secondly, you're giving people a different, entrainment point, a different kind of energy that they can start to relate to, and they can start to vibe with, and they can start to kind of copy, right? Because it's much easier to be calm when there's someone around you who is already calm, right? Like you can kind of feel it and be like, oh, this person's calm. That feels good. Maybe I can do that too. So this is very, very powerful. Another benefit of inner peace is that you stop doing stupid, useless work. Because a lot of the work that we, can automatically take on is stupid and useless. It's not going to help. It's not going to get things done. Right? When you have this inner peace, this inner space, you have time, you have space to decide and evaluate what actually makes sense to do. But when you're feeling stressed out and you're just trying to get things off your plate as soon as possible, you might do the quick and easy fix, even if it doesn't really solve anything, and even if it's not really going to help in the long run, and even if it creates more work for you in the long run. So if you're feeling very busy and like there's a lot on your plate, creating and cultivating this inner peace is going to help you select what are the tasks that make sense to do. And lastly, you discover that, inner peace is not a reward for a hard day's work. Inner peace needs to be the starting point so that everything that you do comes from a place of inner peace and not from a place of frantic, stressed out energy. Because if you're coming from a place of frantic, stressed out energy, a lot of the things you do and that you create and that you decide are going to amplify that energy. And when you connect with peaceful presence first, a lot of what you're doing is going to amplify that. Right? So if you're like, hey, I would like to do something good for the world, I want to, contribute to peace on earth, like this is the way to do it. And I'm very, very serious. The only way to bring more peace is to start being it. Because this is the only space you have control over, is your own self, your own body. And that's hard enough, most days, right? So it's a great place to start. And then when you can cultivate that and hold that vibe on the inside, you'll start to see it rubs off on other people. All right, so I'll put the link to Peaceful Presence below. If you're interested in that, you can check it out. Personally, I think inner peace is a great measure of progress and success, especially for highly sensitive people, because it makes your life a lot easier. It's like you get the reward up front. You have dessert first, and then you do the work. You have the inner peace already. It helps you to do things in a more balanced way. it prevents you from spinning out and getting overstimulated. And it just creates that space where you can really hear your intuition and really tune into what is the right next step for you and access that yourself, right? Because ultimately that's the goal. The goal is to be able to access your own intuition, let that guide you, and not have other people tell you what you should be doing or what the right thing is, but really being able to evaluate from a peaceful place, this feels right, right? Because if you're evaluating from a stressed out, angry, frustrated, fearful place, then you're gonna react based on old ideas and old fears, not based on what your intuition is truly saying. But if you can create that peaceful space first, and then check in with like, how am I feeling about a particular idea or a particular kind of, step that I might take, then you can really evaluate how that feels for you, how that lands, and you can really hear your intuitive guidance on that. All right, I hope this was helpful. Thanks so much for listening.